Last year, we saw wide receivers like Drake London, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and T. Higgins finally break out and live up to their potential. And if you drafted them, you reap the rewards of that. So which wide receivers are going to do it in 2025? I got 5 I need to tell you about. And let's start with Zay Flowers, who feels like he kind of was going to break out in 2024, but he really didn't. But you look at the underlying metrics, there is some signs here that 2025 could definitely be his year. In 2024, he was 8th among all wide receivers in separation score, according to Fantasy Points data, and he was 4th best among wide receivers out of the slot. He finished with 115 targets, which was 21st best among wide receivers. He also had the 15th highest target share among wide receivers and the 24th highest first read percentage. Not to mention, he was 14th among all wide receivers in yards after catch per reception, which was kind of what he was known for coming out of college, right? This is a guy, get the ball in his hands, let him make a play, a yard after catch monster. So you put all that together, you feel like, man, he should have had a really strong season, but why didn't he? Well, shockingly, he only had a 72% catchable target rate, again, according to Fantasy Points data, which was 67th among all qualified wide receivers. This feels strange considering he plays with Lamar Jackson. I gotta figure this was an outlier rather than the norm here. Now he's entering year 3, which is a pivotal, prime breakout year for wide receivers. 3 years, him and Lamar Jackson playing together. I gotta think this connection gets better. I gotta think that catchable target number goes way up in 2025. And if it does, we could be looking at a wide receiver ready to go for 90 plus catches, over 1,200 yards, over 6 touchdowns, and if he does that, it's going to be a breakout season for Zay Flowers. Not to mention the ceiling is even higher than that, in my opinion. So I know Zay Flowers was frustrating. If you had Zay Flowers, you probably were very frustrated because there was probably weeks where he was on your bench where he went off and weeks where he was in your starting lineup that he didn't. But I think year 3 is going to be a huge breakout year for Zay Flowers in this offense with Lamar Jackson. So he's going to be a guy I'm going to be aggressively targeting in redraft and in Dynasty to get a hold of that breakout while his value is a little bit low right now. Now, Rome Odunze did not have the separation score of a guy like Zay Flowers, and his underlying advanced metrics definitely do not pop off the page if you look at them, and you might be thinking, okay, this guy's looking like a bust as a rookie, but it's too early to give up on Rome Odunze, especially when you realize that this guy had to play with not only inconsistent quarterback play, but also very inconsistent play calling here. He had a 61% catchable target rate, which ranked 150th among qualified wide receivers. Not to mention his average depth of target was 14.2, which was the 25th highest, meaning they were basically just chucking the ball to him down the field, and it wasn't really catchable most of the time they did this. But there's reason for optimism heading into year 2 for Rome Odunze. Number 1, of course, namely, we're going to see a new head coach for the Bears, a new coaching staff here for the Bears. At the time I'm recording this, I don't know who it is yet. Maybe we'll know by the time this video goes out. Maybe it'll be Ben Johnson. That would be great. But whoever it is, it's going to be an upgrade over what they had last year. No doubt about it here. And we also have to think Caleb Williams is going to improve going into year 2. Okay, yeah, he was a rookie last year. Again, stuck with terrible coaching. You got to think they're going to bolster the offensive line. That has to be priority number 1 for the Bears after they get a head coach, of course. And another thing here for Rome Odunze that really could help him in year 2 is Keenan Allen's a free agent. There's no guarantee the Bears are going to bring Keenan Allen back. I mean, why bring Keenan Allen back? He was good last year, not knocking Keenan Allen or anything, but do you really want to invest in a wide receiver at Keenan Allen's age when you've got Rome Odunze, you've got DJ Moore, and again, you have other needs? Probably not. So we can see Rome Odunze going into the next season as a clear number 2 wide receiver here behind a better offensive line with a better offensive system. Don't give up on Rome Odunze. This guy was one of the most talented wide receivers in last year's draft class as a prospect. There is still plenty of potential for Rome Odunze. Don't give up on this guy yet, and don't be surprised if he breaks out in 2025. Now, speaking of wide receiver disappointments, nobody was probably more disappointing than Marvin Harrison Jr., who was the number 1 wide receiver drafted last year, had all the hype coming into that draft class, and really was pretty underwhelming as a rookie. Now, I wouldn't call him a bust or anything, but certainly didn't live up to the hype, and he certainly wasn't as good as wide receivers like Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Ladd McConkey, of course. But again, way too early to give up on this guy, especially when you look at his two halves of his season. In the first half, he was just deployed as kind of like what I call or some people call a sacrificial X wide receiver, basically like just line up on the outside and run deep, and every now and then we'll chuck it to you, and sometimes good things will happen. But as the season went on, they changed that. They started using him in better ways, started getting him involved in more easier throws over the middle, shorter routes, and I think we're going to see that continue going into year 2. But there were still some positives here. He did finish 20th among all wide receivers in targets, and his first read percentage of 27 was higher than guys like DK Metcalf and Jerry Jeudy. Now we're going into year 2 here. You know he's going to get better. He's going to be more comfortable with the NFL game. Kyler Murray is going to be more comfortable with him. And again, I think we're going to see him used better in this offense. So we can see both of those numbers go up into year 2. This is still an incredibly talented player with who I believe is still a talented QB in Kyler Murray. And really it's him, Trey McBride, and then what? Michael Wilson? I mean, that's really it here. Don't be surprised if Marvin Harrison Jr. has a huge bounce back year in year 2. I guess I shouldn't say a bounce back, because what is he bouncing back from? A huge breakout year in year 2 in 2025. He's got the talent. He's got the quarterback. He's in an offense that can support him. Don't give up on Marvin Harrison Jr., especially if you're in Dynasty or something like that, and take advantage of him in redraft if his value drops. Now, another rookie wide receiver whose role drastically changed as the season went on was Xavier Worthy. Early in the season, he was just a guy that the Chiefs used like, hey, run deep, run fast, or some gadget plays like screens, end arounds, jet sweeps, things like that. But as the season went on, his role changed and they started to trust him more, and that is huge for him going into 2025. Not counting the playoffs, he finished the season with 9 or more targets in 3 straight games, and he had 8 red zone targets in those games. In fact, over that stretch, he had the 9th most targets of all wide receivers, and he led the team with a very, very strong 31 first read percentage. So he didn't just improve his role, he became the focal point of this passing attack. Now, if we project ahead to 2025, what are we looking at for the Chiefs wide receiver room? Well, DeAndre Hopkins, going to be a free agent. Again, are they really going to bring DeAndre Hopkins back next year? Probably not going to do that. Rashee Rice coming back off a serious knee injury. Who knows how he's going to look early in the season, if he's even going to be ready early in the season, and is he going to need more time? And then you got Hollywood Brown, who I could see them bringing back. Remember, he did sign that 1-year deal, and he's been pretty effective for him so far, so I could see them bringing him back. But even if they do, this is an offense that can support all 3 of these guys. There's a chance they just say, hey, let's just roll with Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice next year. And Xavier Worthy could be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. He gives them that vertical speed threat, not to mention that over the middle speed threat, not to mention the screen, jet sweep, end around speed threat. There's so many ways they can use this guy and will use this guy in this offense. I've seen a lot of sites out there, early rankings that have Rashee Rice ahead of Xavier Worthy. I don't know if I agree with that. Again, especially knowing Rashee Rice, probably not going to be 100% to start the season. Give me Xavier Worthy every single time. This guy has the upside I'm looking for, and I think he has a big breakout year in 2025. And then finally, let's get deep here to a name you might not be thinking of, and that is Kayshon Boutte of the New England Patriots. Had a very nice finish to the season here. In fact, really had a nice season overall, except that kind of got lost because he was on the Patriots, which wasn't basically the most fantasy friendly for wide receivers. From week 8 on, he had 6 or more targets in all but 3 games. He also was behind only Hunter Henry, and yes, Hunter Henry, the tight end, because that shows you how the offense was, in first read percentage over that stretch. Now he's going into that pivotal year 3 as a wide receiver. This is where we see wide receivers typically make that leap. It's like the light bulb switches and they say, I got it. I figured out the NFL game. And we kind of saw that down the stretch. He had some nice games. And when you look at this Patriots offense heading into 2025, we know they've got their quarterback with Drake May. Now, certainly wide receiver could be a position they want to address. We will see. They do have other needs here. But again, this is not a very talented, deep wide receiver class. Whatever wide receiver they draft may not be ready out of the gates week 1. I think we could see Boutte in that, X outside wide receiver role with Demario Douglas in that slot role. And they need it. They need a dynamic playmaker like him. And Drake May showed enough as a rookie that if he improves going into year 2, he could support Kayshon Boutte as they break out. Now, I don't know if he has the upside of Well, he certainly does not have the upside of guys like Marvin Harrison, Xavier Worthy, Romo Dunze, the other guys I've talked about. This is more kind of a deeper type of guy, but we see these guys, they're kind of forgotten. They haven't done anything for 2 years. People forget about them, and then bam, all of a sudden, here they come to help your fantasy team. So don't sleep on Boutte in both redraft or dynasty. He's a great buy low. He's going to cost you almost nothing in dynasty. In a redraft, he's probably going to be free in most of your drafts. But pay attention to him. Assuming the Patriots don't do something crazy at wide receiver this offseason, he could go in as the wide receiver 1 in this offense in 2025. So there you go. There's 5 wide receivers I think are ready to break out in 2025. But if you want to see 5 players ready to go nuclear in 2025, you got to check out this video right here.